class. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the class today. I see Juliana just joining right now. Today is our week 14 of the class. So there are 18 weeks in this class. So we have this week plus 4 other weeks, and then we're gonna be done with the class. So we are like what, almost 70% passed through that, so which is really good. I see most of you are holding your horses, so please, as a reminder, like you stay here, like we are almost done with everything, and these classes and even laboratories are the easiest ones in my class. So you stay over here. I know many of you have work, and you have family members, and you have children and everything, and I admire and I respect that. And I know sometimes it's really difficult to handle many things together. That's what my admiration is to you, and my respect, because despite being an online class and sometimes we are not really good at technology, but we are still here getting an A or a B, but those B still can turn into an A if you turn in all classes, and then if you turn in all homework, and if you do great on your exams and everything, right? So just let's continue doing it. We have only, including this week, we have 5 weeks to go, including the final. So keep it up, and then let's keep having those good grades that you're having, okay? So today we're gonna keep moving with taxonomy. So we're gonna move a little bit higher. So we are going to leave behind viruses and bacteria. Did anyone, by chance, during this past week, did you use your new knowledge of viruses and bacteria to explain anyone about the facts of viruses and replication and something like that? Anyone? No? But don't forget, if you have a chance to transfer that information and explain things like that to other people, feel free to throw all your knowledge of biology to them so they can catch something from that. But anyways, today we are going to move from minor organisms like bacteria, which are prokaryotic cells, and today we're going to start with eukaryotic cells in the domain eukarya. So remember in the homework from last week, we have 3 big domains. So we have archaeobacteria, eubacteria, and then lastly we have eukarya. So eukarya is for all the eukaryotic cells. We actually belong to that big domain, including microorganisms that are just living in the pond water, like, and they're eating debris, and they're eating other microorganisms and eating bacteria, all the way to major animals like the blue whale, the elephant, and all those dinosaurs that once existed, and other types of plants that are extinct and everything. We all, those belong to the same domain that is called eukarya. So we all belong to group of eukaryotic cells. So let me share my screen with you, because I have some proposals also for some dates that I want to change, but I want to bring it up to you first to discuss the changes that I like to do. So today we're going to be talking about protists and fungi. So these are really wide variety of groups, and probably the most diverse is the protists, because we're going to see why, but they are very diverse microorganisms that are very diverse. So let me do my full screen over here, and then put my pointers. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about protists and fungi. So I have some proposals over here for you that I wanted to bring it up, and then we can discuss if you want to make the changes or not. Actually, there is only one change. So the exam number 4 is supposed to be on May 12th, as you can see over here. But actually, when I was reading all the topics that we need to discuss, we're going to talk about Mendelian genetics, evolution, bacteria and viruses, protists and fungi, animals, plants, and all of those topics were supposed to go into the exam number 4. So my proposal for you instead of having such a really big exam, which is going to be really long because I have to cover all of these topics, I wanted to split it and then just have the exam a week earlier and have the topics of Mendelian genetics, evolution, and bacteria and viruses only, and then leave for the final protists, fungi, animal, plants, and ecology. So what I'm also trying to say is like, don't forget that the final is going to be on May 26th. For the final, I'm going to require, and I'm going to send an email a couple weeks before, is that the final, I actually have to do it with you. That means that I have to proctor the exam in the way that you will do the exam in front of me, and you will have to turn on your camera so I can have proof that you are there doing it. So I actually will not care if you have, say, for example, you have say an example, you are in front of me with your book like checking and reading and everything. I'm not gonna care about it. Or if you're changing from tab to other tab, or you using your cell phone to get the answer or anything like that, I just want to see that it's actually you, the one that is in front of a computer doing the exam. So that's going to be for the final. I'm gonna send an email about it. But also for the final is not going to be cumulative. So that's a good thing with that. So you are going to be examining for only these topics over here. So I want to hear your comments if that is okay with you to move the exam for a week earlier and only discuss these topics over here that are here. And then the final is going to be about the topics right below over here. So David is saying yes. Andrew is saying yes too.
So question, so you like really, you just care that we're taking the test ourselves? That's basically what you're saying?
Yes, yes. I just wanna have the camera in front of you just to see that you're taking the exam.
Okay, cool, gotcha.
So if, I mean, all of you, you can like brush your hair. I wanna also try to take a screenshot of everyone before, so I can have a memory of everyone over here. So I'm gonna take the screenshots of the Zoom meeting. I'm gonna send it over to everyone. So you know, like, just be prepared for those things. But again, I'm not gonna be judging. I'm not gonna be checking that you're moving from computer to another computer or you are doing something like that. I actually even I had 3 exams last week. I was in a training, and I had exams on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. 2 hours of exam each day. And then the professor was the same, like, you can use your books, you can use everything, but I just need to have proof that you are in front of me taking the exam. In case something happens, it's not, for example, it's not going to be, who knows, it's going to be Christine over there, but it's going to be his brother that has a PhD in biochemistry, the one taking the exam or something like that, you know? So they just want to have a proof. Community college wants to have a proof that you are the ones taking the exam. So what do you say? I want to hear other people comments about moving the exam number 4 a week earlier and having less topics to cover. Anyone besides David and Mary and Andrew? Claudia saying that is okay with her. Juliana is thumbs up. Anyone else?
Yeah, so it's getting moved earlier because we're skipping a module?
Yeah, we're skipping, actually, we're skipping these 4 topics over here. Protists, fungi, animals, and plants. So instead of being longer, a really, really long exam is going to be only for Mendelian genetics, evolution, bacteria, and viruses. So I'm gonna send you a study guide if you want about what I'm going to be testing on Mendelian genetics. So I'm pretty sure like 2 or 3 Punnett squares of like a homozygous organism for blue flowers is going to breed with a heterozygous with white flowers. So what are the chances of this and this and this? So this, I'm going to be asking these type of questions, etc. I can send you kind of a study guide for you to know what I'm going to be grading in the exam over here.
Okay, so you're kind of just breaking up like what would be a really big test, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah. So it seems like everyone is saying yes. So what I'm going to do is like I'm gonna send an email officially. I'm gonna move it on the syllabus. So I'm gonna make it exam shorter. It's gonna be a week earlier. It's going to be on May 5th. And again, the same instructions and procedures as the other ones. That once you open it, you're gonna have 1,440 minutes to do it, which is equivalent of 24 hours. So I'm gonna open it usually like Wednesday and 6 p.m. and this is gonna be closed until Sunday. So you're gonna have 4 days anytime you wanna do it. I'm gonna try to put some practice exams. So don't worry again about those practice exams. With any time that I'm sending a practice exam, you can do it over and over and over and over again and over again. I'm not going to be able to see the results that you're doing because since they're not graded, you can start again and again and again. And if a picture or something is missing, don't worry about it because most of those exams, I'm not preparing those exams. I'm just like importing from the commons of professors. I'm just importing those exams to my modules and then I'm just like publishing them over there for you to practice. Okay. All right, so now we have the agreement over here. And don't forget that um, this is actually on the syllabus that we have on May 10th. We have a second review of the syllabus. So remember I'm saying mandatory because I have the right to check the attendance of students. If you're missing two, I have the right to kick out people, which I haven't done ever, but I just want to have everyone over there collaborating with each other. So before that, if you can send me like one day or a couple of days before a link of any document or any document that you're working for the special project, you can send it over before so I can use have some comments during those days. But the review is going to be similar as the review that we had a couple of weeks ago. All right. So May 10th, don't forget. So I want to remind everyone for this. Is there any question before we keep moving on? No questions? All good? All right. So let's keep moving. So we were going to talk now about protists. So protists, probably this is a really wide group that probably a few people has heard of. The importance of this group is really huge for humans because they're coming from organisms that actually make oxygen for us through photosynthesis, all the way to other organisms that actually are parasites, and many of them are, trust me, in many tropical countries. And actually, I've been infected by some type of these protists, and this is not really fun to be infected with these organisms over here. So this is just a little bit of the most accepted classification of life of eukaryotic organisms. So as you can see over here, we are positioned in this group over here, which are animals, or they call it metazoa. Then we are related with another group of aquatic organisms called choanoflagellates, which we'll be talking about them like in 2 weeks. And then, or actually, yeah, next week when I talk about them. And then we have a really big group, which is the one that is right over here, which is the group that we are going to be talking today. Even if you see over here at the end, it's like protists of uncertain placement because in many of these ones, we actually don't know the exact um, evolutionary relationship with each other. So scientists are still working on this, but based on their DNA genomes and the sequences and everything, we are placing them as this position over here. But if you check them probably next year or next year, some of these ones actually are going to change. So we are not going to study all of those ones today because this is not a class of protists, is not a whole semester. I actually had like zoology of invertebrates and other type of botany one in which we were studying all of these organisms, but this is not a class for full biology or anything like that. So these organisms, protists, they are coming from very, very diverse shapes and forms and everything. Most of them are going to be unicellular. So all these ones are microscopic pictures of these microorganisms. But also in this group, we have kelp. Has anyone heard about the kelp of the Sargassum forest in the ocean before? So kelp are a type of algae called the brown algae that are actually included into this group. If you hear about the red algae and green algae, they're actually more related to plants, but actually the brown algae are related to protists. And these are algae that they can grow up to, I don't know, 150 feet tall. So they have some specialized parts and actually let them float. So they are full of gases and oxygen, so they let them float. But the way in how they're shaped is like they are so tall and so big in the ocean that it actually looks like a forest under the water. So fishes and other seals and other animals, usually when they're getting hunted by a shark or any other big predator in the ocean, they go and hide in these forests. Forest they call it, because it's really thick and it's really hard to go through. So that's why small organisms can go through these places, but a big shark that might be like this big is really hard to go through. So we have really wide variety from very small microorganisms to really big ones. And we have organisms that are pathogenic, like these ones with this potato, and others, one like these ones are free living, and they are just floating in the ocean, making photosynthesis. Even other organisms in this, if you heard about the um, this bloom in the ocean that when you see it is red. So, and people say like you don't have to go there because there is a red tide. So if you don't have to go there because the red tide might be toxic, and you don't have to eat animals from there because the red tide is a bloom of organisms like this one over here. This is called dinoflagellates. We're gonna see them in a little bit. So these ones are going to, they produce usually toxins, which are really minor for humans, but in the bloom of the boom of these microorganisms, everything is going to turn red because they have pigments instead of like the chloroplast, similar to the chloroplast, but instead of having chlorophyll, they're going to have another pigments are going to be red. And when you have a mass concentration of these organisms, like these ones over here, they're going to produce high concentrations of toxin, and then some other organisms that are filtering like oysters and similars or mollusks, they're going to keep that toxin, and then other fishes are going to eat those mollusks, and then we're fishing over there, and then we bring it over to our kitchen, and then we eat it, and then people get intoxicated with the toxins of these organisms, and then they end up in the hospital. So um, they are very, very important too in the industry of fishes and fishery, etc., etc. So this is a picture of the kelp forest that I was telling you. Like if you can see, it's like they're really tall, and just small fishes can go through over here. So let's talk a little bit of the main characteristics of protists over here. So this is something that I could ask in the exam. What are the three main characteristics of protists? So actually the word protist is not really a good evolutionary definition, because protist, the word protist is just coming from a really long line of biologists that actually when we find a new microorganism that is eukaryotic, that doesn't belong to animals, that doesn't belong to plants, and doesn't belong to fungus, then we automatically tell them that they are a protist. And that's it. That was usually the general and or the genetic classification of protists. Like it's a eukaryotic organism that is not a plant, it's not an animal, and is not a fungus neither. So these protists usually do not form a natural clade. That doesn't mean they are not monophyletic. And if you remember monophyletic, when you have the phylogenetic tree, monophyletic means that you have like this common ancestor, and then you group them with all of the descendants. What happens with protists is like they are polyphyletic, and they might have probably different common ancestors, like here and here, And usually what we're doing is like we're grouping them in a different way. So we still don't understand the complete classification of protists, but since they are not an animal or a plant or a fungus, we automatically put them between this group over here. So they have different cycles, different life cycles. They have different types of locomotion. We're gonna see them later. They can have flagella. They can have cilia, which are used like hair-like structures around the cell that's gonna help them to move. And also they call the trophic levels because they can be either photosynthetic, they can be even parasites, or they can be even be heterotrophic organisms. So they can be either one of those ones. So trying to group them because of the type of food that they eat or the type of locomotion of the life cycle that they have is also very complicated. So as I was saying, Protista or Protist doesn't really exist at all. So instead of this, when you're going with the hardcore scientists and biologists that are classifying them, they prefer to call them depending on their corresponding taxonomic phylum. So remember, phylum is a group of organisms that they share some specific characteristics. So when you're doing the worksheet, you have like the domain, then the kingdom, and then the phylum. So the phylum is usually the most genetic aggregation, the most genetic group that we are going to use in order to classify organisms. So the following names that I'm going to mention when we're talking about classification is going to be based on the phylum of these organisms over here. And when you see a word like this, phyla, F P-H-Y-L-A. Phyla is the plural of phylum. So sometimes I'm gonna be talking and they say we have numerous phyla, instead of saying like we have numerous phylums with the S at the end. I don't know why the Latin people, they really like changing like, okay, so singular is going to be one word and plural another word. So we're gonna make it very difficult for everyone to learn Latin or Greek or anything like that. So I think this one is Greek, but phyla is going to be plural. So when I'm talking about numerous phyla, that means like I'm talking about two or more phylum over here. So in general, we're gonna have three different groups of protists. The ones that are going to be heterotrophic, and they're gonna tell them that they are like animal-like protists, which all are the protozoans, are heterotrophic. Then we have the protophyta, which are going to be all those ones that are going to be autotrophic or producing oxygen and making photosynthesis. And then the ones that are the mold slimes that are going to be very similar to fungus. So we just tell them that they look like animals or plants or fungus because they just have some looks similar to those other kingdoms, but actually don't belong and they are not part of the other groups of organisms. So for example, groups over here, so we have these like slime molds. They actually look like a mold, but actually they are not. They have these heterotrophic organisms like these ones and these amoeba. Actually, they're going to be heterotrophic. That means they're going to obtaining the food by just finding it somewhere else. And then we have autotrophic organisms like this one that actually are going to be the ones producing oxygen. So a little bit of protists in ecological systems. Protists are extremely important in ecological systems. One of the number one things that I would like to mention from the very beginning is because actually 70 to 80% of oxygen that we are breathing right now, so inhale and exhale, is actually coming from protists over here. So even if you tell me like, oh yeah, plants and forests are extremely important because of all the oxygen that it produces, yes, like forests, jungles and these type of systems are extremely important because they produce a large amount of oxygen, but also they preserve a huge amount of biodiversity. But also on the other side, the protists, even if we didn't know, these microorganisms, there are going to be some groups of microorganisms that are going to be producing 70 to 80% of the oxygen on Earth. So even this is a fun fact that you can tell now. It's like, wow, actually we are breathing the oxygen that microorganisms are producing right now. So then in this type of organisms that are producing 70 to 80% of oxygen, we are going to be grouping them into just a general ecological group called this phytoplankton. I don't know if you've seen this like Blue Planet with David Attenborough, or if you have watched these Netflix documentaries about the ocean and everything, and you heard the word plankton. So plankton is just general like microorganisms that are present in the ocean. So usually they are in the really first feet of the ocean because they're in the shallow water. They're just like in the very first feet because they prefer to be floating over there because the warmth of the sun, and then many of these ones are going to be photosynthetic, so they need to be close to the light. But this plankton is going to be the very basic level of structure of food in the ocean. So without them, like no other bigger animals could exist, like bigger fishes, and even there are some big animals like whales that actually are feeding from plankton. So plankton can be from protists all the way to krill, which is a type of mollusk, like a tiny, really tiny shrimps. But actually, this plankton can be divided in zooplankton. Those ones are heterotrophic. Phytoplankton, the ones that are autotrophic. And this phytoplankton is the one that actually produces 70 to 80% of the oxygen that we breathe. These zooplankton and general other protists in terrestrial environments, they can be decomposer. That means that when there is a leaf in the jungle or a forest, they can actually use that inorganic matter and they can recycle it back into organisms. Since they are consuming those ones, they're going to bring them inside of them and they're going to reuse all those materials that are decaying. They will reuse them. And many of these ones that we will see later, they're pathogens. So this is also included for humans. They are pathogens and they help to control the populations of other organisms. So you see this guy swimming over here to, I think this is, should be a probably a bad picture because this is algae, but sometimes they have like a really huge density of phytoplankton that sometimes it can look like this one over here. So proteins for how they are important for humans. Actually, if you eat in seaweeds, sometimes they have a composition of made out of protists. As pathogens, you're gonna see that we have some nasty pathogens in protists that actually can kill humans. We have some diseases in Central America and South America and other places that actually are called Chagas disease. I don't know if you've heard that Chagas disease, but it's a parasite that actually starts infecting the red blood cells. They go inside of the red blood cells and they start like reproducing inside of the cells, and then they burst, they kill the red blood cells and they start infecting. At some point that they go to the heart and they start creating cysts over there, and then the heart start getting a little bit enlarged, bigger and bigger, and then people after a couple of years of having cardiac deficiency, they pass away. If you heard about the word malaria before, anyone heard about malaria before? So actually malaria is one of the protists that we are going to see today. And actually, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, was created in the mid 1940s, actually to fight off malaria in the United States. So I don't know which president was back then. I think it was Roosevelt or somebody else, but he created the CDC in order to fight off malaria in the United States. But due to the success of the Center for Disease Control in the United States controlling malaria, they actually expanded the CDC to take control of general diseases. So now, as you can see now, the CDC is overseeing all of the diseases and public health issues in the United States, that has become a really huge institution that is really scientific, and we can really rely sometimes on their analysis, etc., etc. Other things are important for humans in the industry. I also was reading, I tried to get the name of a medicine, but I don't remember it, to be honest. But actually there are some extracts from some, I think, brown algae and other products that actually help to reduce the high blood pressure. So even if we think that it can be pathogens or we can eat them, but actually in medicine, we can use them for high blood pressure and other uses in medicine. So they can be also not only detrimental for humans, but they can be very, very beneficial as well. So let's go a little bit over the classification. This is the part in which I am going to jump really, really fast. As you can see, this is the phylogenetic classification or the evolutionary relationships between all of them. So of course, I'm not going to mention all of those ones because these are really intense, that should have been really intense course. I'm just going to touch bases in some of them like Amoebozoa, Circozoa, Radiolaria, Albilates and Sarmenopiles, Euglenozoa, and some of these Parabasalids, but we're gonna see them in these next following slides. So what I'm going to do over here in order to speed up the class right now, what I'm going to do is like, I'm just going to go through some slides very quickly. So don't worry into taking notes or anything like that, because there is already a worksheet that is going to be talking about the classification of protists and fungi already. So let me stop sharing over here for a moment and let me share the Word document so we can review it over here. Okay, so can you see my Word document over here? Yes? Okay, so this is gonna be actually the protist/fungi worksheet. So the instructions are just complete the following chart. So I just put example over here for Foraminifera, which is a phylum of protists. And I want you to find the common name of this organism, and most of these answers, you're going to find them in the slides. So if you think that it's not on the slide, just let me know so I can improve it. But also you can have, you can search on the book of Campbell, and also you can Google it, and then you can find the information you need over here. Don't forget that you have other resources beside the slides when you're working on these worksheets, so you can find the answers over there. So say, for example, for Foraminifera, common name for rams, and then the main characteristics is like they have a shell, they have like a cover shell that is going to be made out of calcium carbonate. They're going to be marine, and mostly they're going to be amoeboids. I'm going to show you what is an amoeba later. And other comments, if you find something interesting about them, is like they are getting sedimented at the bottom of the ocean. So they're getting sedimented for hundreds of millions of years. So at the end, what happens is like when they're getting sedimented, the layers are getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And then actually scientists, they can go and grab like a horizontal, no, a vertical line of these samples over here. And then because many of the compounds, they can get mixed with the calcium carbonate, actually scientists, they can study the levels of oxygen back 200 million years ago, 150 million years ago, what other compounds were present in the atmosphere or in the ocean and everything. So they can make a lot of studies, because these sediments of these organisms, they've been formed by over hundreds of millions of years. So then I want you to write this for amoebas, for dinoflagellates, for these parasites, Apicomplexa, and all these ones over here, Phaeophyta, which are the brown algae, Euglenidae, Kinetoplastida. And then for fungi, we have actually 4 phyla that are going to be named over here. Remember, I said phyla because I'm not using phylums. I'm using phyla because are plural. Basidiomycota, Ascomycota, Zygomycota, and Chytridomycota. We're gonna review them quickly just for you to have an idea of what they are, okay? So once you finish this, you're gonna submit it. It's going to be worth 5 points. So then you also can keep it for your exam, because it's going to be, I can ask some of those characteristics during the exam, okay? If you have any questions, don't hesitate in asking me, stopping me, or anything like that, okay? So for example, we have the phylum Amoebozoa. If you hear about amoebas before, like the amoebas are pretty cool microorganisms because they are really, they don't have a shape. They are asymmetric, and they move through a structure called the pseudopause. Pseudopods are just like extension-like structures that are moving around. So have you ever watched the movie with Venom before? Anyone watched the movie Venom? So like you see how Venom, just like the gelatin shape was just moving around, like extending, having like extensions of the body just moving around and around. So pseudopods are just a way in how amoebas are going to move. Just let me show you quickly a video actually, so then we can understand what are pseudopods. So pseudopods are going to be just extensions of the body. So let me just check quickly over here. Just let me know if you can hear the audio over here. So let me share quickly my screen over here. Can you watch it over here? Okay, so this is actually an amoeba eating another microorganism. So you see these extensions are getting formed. You see all the cytoplasm flowing towards this place. So this is actually like a pseudopod. Actually, this is an extension. So then this one is going to get trapped over here. And what the amoeba is going to do is going to slowly close it and close it and close it and absorb it at the end. And it's going to digest it inside. So this is the type of structure you see. They're getting more closed. So then you see another pseudopod is coming over here. The other protist is getting desperate because it can't move and is screaming, ah, let me go. And then at the end, it's going to get eaten over there. So another example of another amoeba is eating a type of algae called Spirogyra. So it attaches over here and is going to penetrate the cell wall and then it's going to eat it. So you see these ones, these chloroplasts, how they're going to disappear because like a straw is going to start eating it and it's going to start sucking everything and then it's eating it over there. And the pseudopod, so you see, is dragging everything inside. And this is actually happening in real time. And that's it. So that's again pretty cool, right? Amoebas are very, very cool. So one of the scary things with amoebas actually is like some of them, they can be parasitic. So this is a pseudopod, which is going to be an extension of the cytoplasm. And then their feeding technique is going to be called phagocytosis. Cytosis is coming from the cytoplasm and phago means like eating. So it's just like an extension of the cytoplasm and getting on top of something and then eating it. So that's what it looks like, a kind of like a sci-fi movie over there. So pseudopods, don't forget, this is one of the main characteristics of amoebas. And this is, you see another one trying to eat it over here. And this is the process and how they eat by engulfing something. And then at the end is they're going to digest it inside of them. So it's one of the sad part with these ones, they can be also parasites. So this is a nasty picture, but actually this somebody that didn't take care and got infected was something called acanthamoeba keratitis, which is an amoeba that is going to eat your eyes. Literally, is going to start eating the cells in your eyes, and then the people is going to look something like this. So they're going to go completely blind like this. There are, what is this? It's a video running over here. Hold on. It's a video of an algae over here. Hold on. Sorry about it. There's a video keep running over here. All right. So let me keep sharing over here. And then if you heard before the traveler's diarrhea before, like anyone who was traveling other places and you were drinking water in other country and then you came back and 3 days later you start having a lot of diarrhea and everything, etc. And sometimes it's not even a virus, it's not even a bacteria, but actually is this entamoeba histolytica, is this species over here, which actually is going to start infecting your intestines, and then you're going to start, your body will want to flush it, and by flushing it means like you're gonna start having diarrhea because you want to flush it out, but actually you're gonna get abdominal pain, diarrhea, severe colitis, etc. And there is about like 480 million people infected a year. So I actually in Guatemala, I got this traveler's diarrhea because I was doing a lot of field work. So I was actually camping in really far away places, camping for 3-4 days without anything except my all the gears that we were bringing and everything. So sometimes you used to get sick if you were not being careful with what you were eating or drinking or washing your hands. And these are the links of the videos I watched, we just watched over here. The next phylum is Foraminifera, the one that I put in the chart. They are also called forams. They are also, and they move by pseudopode, but actually they have a shell like this one that actually is made of calcium carbonate, a shell or a test. And these extension-like structures are the pseudopods. You see these ones over here. What they do is like they look like a spider web, and they're gonna capture food, and they're gonna retract it, and then they're gonna eat it like this. So they are marine, most of them. So another pictures of forams over here. So you can see, even if they are microscopic, they are really cool. They have really nice really nice shapes over here. Next one, Dinoflagellata. So dinoflagellata means, dino means whirling, flagellata is coming from the word flagellum. So actually they have two flagella, one that is just around over here without use, and then they have another flagella that is also over here. So you can see the pictures over here, the micrographies of this one, they have really nice shapes and everything. They look pretty cool. They're going to be most of them marine and photosynthetic, but some of them are going to create the red tides. So you see the picture over here with the red tide. So imagine a surfer surfing around over here. Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. Or the waves over here, pretty cool. But they don't notice that actually all this is like a whole red tide over here, which is producing a lot of toxins. In some places like this one on the next picture over here, you see the red tide, the water is completely red because of the photosynthetic pigments are going to be red. Um, Instead of chlorophyll, they have other um, pigments for photosynthesis. They're going to absorb all the wavelengths of light except red. So that's why it's going to look like this. So people like this person over here, they can't fish because if they fish and they eat the fishes, they're going to get intoxicated and probably die. And so that's why there are moratoriums of fishing in these places when you have this red tide, because you can get people killed because of this. Actually, also some dinoflagellates are going to glow in the dark. So I'm gonna show you a video later that actually is narrated by David Attenborough. So actually, these ones are going to glow in the dark because with the presence of oxygen, they're going to react with ATP. They have a specific enzyme. With ATP and oxygen, they're going to react and they're going to set free light. So actually, some dinoflagellates, they can glow in the dark like this one. And actually, this is a real picture. You see the boat over here, and then you see them over here. So if you give me 1 minute, actually, I can try to find you a watch. We can watch quickly a short video of those ones because they are actually pretty cool. So dinoflagellates. Let me just find it over here quickly. There you go. So let me share my screen over here with you quickly. So I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear anything, but actually this is real. See the birds over here? Can you actually hear David Attenborough over here? No.
We can't hear, but we can see.
Okay, so just watch quickly. I'm gonna describe. So this is, you see, this is real microorganisms reacting. So actually you can play with that. Actually, this is not going to be toxic. It's just, you see, look at it, look. That's pretty cool.
Is that
Actually,
kind of like bioluminescence?
yes, yes. Actually, that's bioluminescence. So this is the very uh, uh, a good way to say it is bioluminescence, and actually it's just a reaction of an enzyme with ATP and oxygen, so it's going to release light over there. So
That's super cool.
yeah, this is super cool, and I've seen it actually once. I was in a project many years ago, and we were doing research in ocean. Actually, we were like 300 miles in the open ocean. And then actually we saw dolphins swimming through these dinoflagellates. So there were dolphins glowing in the dark. So that, you could see it. It was really, really beautiful to see. So it can be pretty cool. Next one, phylum Apicomplexa. All these phylum are really nasty. All of them are going to be obligate parasites of vertebrates and invertebrates. So all of them, all of these organisms are going to be parasites. So we have between 1.2 to 10 million species. So can you imagine how many parasites we have over here? So they have this structure. It's going to be like a needle-like. So they use it for attachment to the host, and then they can go inside of the host and then parasite over here. We have many, just gonna skip this one because we have some pathogens over here. If you hear about malaria, the one that I was mentioning before, is coming from the species, the genus Plasmodium. So we have Plasmodium falciparum, which is one species, is this one that is right over here. So this is a red blood cell, but inside you see the purple ones. So actually the purple ones inside are the cysts, are actually a stage of the Plasmodium life cycle that actually they need to go inside of this, and then once they're ready, they burst and they destroy the cell. And that's why many people also with malaria, they end up with also, well, they have fever and chills and body aches and everything. Sometimes if it is not treated, they can also die, but they can even ended up with anemia as well. So we have Plasmodium falciparum and another species called Plasmodium vivax. So the ones that we have in the Americas is going to be mainly Plasmodium falciparum. We have Toxoplasma. It creates toxoplasmosis. If you heard that usually a pregnant woman shouldn't be around cats sometimes because the cats can carry diseases. So when people speak like that, it is because mainly cats are one part of the host of Toxoplasma. And what happens with the cycle of Toxoplasma is very interesting because one cycle is a cat and the other cycle is, say, a rat. So what happens is like when Toxoplasma is in the rat, what it's going to do is actually is going to change the behavior of the rat in the way that the rat is going to be fearless. It's not going to be afraid of many situations. So when a cat is walking and then it finds a rat, the rat is not going to run away. The rat is going to be like, hey, what's going on? What's your problem? And obviously the cat is going to eat it, and then Toxoplasma is going to move to the next host over here. So you see, they've been having millions of years to develop these life cycles. And then the cats are going to your house, and then you're changing the litter and everything. If you are not being careful, then you don't wash your hands properly, and your cat could be infected. There is a small probability of this one. Then you, as a human, are going to be infected with Toxoplasma, and they can infect some of your muscle cells as well. And that's why they say for pregnant women it's not good, because even this Toxoplasma, they can infect the babies in development. And then the babies in development, they can have some health issues at a later age when they're born. Cyclospora and other foodborne diseases. You can get diarrhea, etc., etc. Cyclospora. So these pathogens are very important for humans. The next phylum, Ciliophora, the main characteristic, they have cilia, which is a hair-like structure. You see hairs like this one over here. They have tiny hairs around here, like this one over here. So they use it for locomotion or feeding. You have this paramecium over here. You see around over here, like a lot of hairs around, and they use it for moving all over the place. Phylum Ochrophyta diatoms, they are the ones that they produce, they fix 20% of carbon dioxide. Just this phylum is fixing a lot of this, so therefore they're making about 20% of photosynthesis in the whole world. So they are a really important group. Their shell is going to be made out of silica instead of calcium carbonate. And the shapes are pretty. You see them like this one. Actually, when you have a pond of water, water that has been sitting there for a couple of weeks, you can actually take a sample and actually you can find diatoms over there. So these are actual real pictures of what you can find under the microscope when you're working with these guys. So actually they are pretty cool. Some of them you can see even the pigments inside. So they can be pretty, very, very pretty like these ones, different shapes and everything. Phaeophyta, which is the brown algae, they can be up to 150 feet long, like the giant kelp. They are the only protists that are multicellular. So I can ask you an example, what is the only multicellular protists that exist? So you can tell me, or what is the phylum that has multicellular organisms? So you can tell me, oh, Phaeophyta. So brown algae. So you see, this is the kelp forest. That's why they say it's a forest, because you can actually see it's like really, really big. And this is, I think, the there is aquarium south over here. I forgot the name of the cities. I've been there like 3 times, but I forgot the name of the aquarium. But this is actually very cool. When you enter the aquarium, this is the very first thing that you see over here. Monterey Aquarium. So if you haven't been in the Monterey Aquarium, highly recommend you. This is the first thing that you see when you go inside over there. Next phylum, Euglenozoas. I'm gonna go faster because this is something, just a quick review because you're gonna see them. Single cell flagellates, they can be parasitic. So we have 2 classes, Euglenas, which are single cell autotrophic / heterotrophic. They can be either one or the other one, and then the other ones are parasites. So Euglenida, the class, they have a very important characteristic. They have the stigma, which you can call this kind of like an eye for them, because this organelle actually is going to tell them where the light is coming from. So say, for example, from here, I can tell you, oh, the light is coming from here, from there, and from the window over here. But they can actually tell, actually, if they are in a water tank and then you have the euglenas and you have the light over here, actually the euglenas are going to start migrating to this side because they know and they can sense that actually the light is coming from this side because they have this organelle called the stigma, which is for photoreception. So you can either call it like a really, really primitive form of eye, which actually is not, but it is like an analogy of how they use it for directing to a specific location. So one of the cool things with Euglenida is like if you turn off the light, instead of making photosynthesis, they're going to be turned into heterotrophic and they're going to start eating other organic, dead organic material. So that's why they call it mixotrophic or mixotrophs, because they can switch between being predators to autotrophs. And then you turn on the light, they're gonna become autotrophs, but if you turn off the light, they're going to start hunting and eating something else. So they have either one or the other way. So this is a pretty cool picture of Euglena. So that's a shame that we are not present in the lab because this is how we are supposed to see it. And this is the big stigma over here. In Kinetoplastida, if you heard about Trypanosoma cruzi before, or the Chagas disease, this is a disease that also is on the attacks the red blood cells. So what it does is also in a later stage is going to create cysts in the human heart, and then at that point is not you cannot fix it. So the people or the person infected is going to pass away. So there is medicine for this one, but actually can be very, very expensive. So any questions regarding protists so far? This is all the classification that I wanted to give you about protists. So you see, they are a large group, and I omitted another like 20 phyla because they are not important to us, but I just mentioned the very main ones that we needed to be said. So questions about protists, any comments? Scary. Some of them, they can be predators. Some of them, they can be autotrophic. We are breathing 80% of oxygen made by them. They can be also parasites. So like trypanosoma and leishmania. Leishmania is like the sleepy sickness, they call it. So they can be very important for medicine because you can have losses because of them. So any question before we keep moving on about protists? No? Okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want me to continue for another half an hour, or do you want to take a break 10 minutes? Anyone wants to tell me?
Continue.
You want to continue, end up by 7:30 or something like that? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's continue with fungi.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So I want your help over here and tell me when it comes to the word fungi, what is your mind coming to? Mushrooms, pizza with mushrooms, food, or what are your thoughts about fungi when you hear this word fungi or fungus? What can you tell me about it?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms, like this one over here, right? Mushrooms. Okay, what else?
Could it also be like something that growing on a body or something like that?
Something growing on the body, yeah, you know, like
Like
even
on a
with
toenail or something?
toenail, yeah, exactly. Actually, I have a picture of a toenail over here. And actually not, but you see, if you hear also about the athlete feet, it's also fungus. So mushrooms and food and even as David was saying, the toenail that can be a parasite infecting you and everything. Actually, years ago I had it because when I was working on this forest that I was telling you, I was using rubber boots. But sometimes it was raining so hard and everything, so I was getting my feet wet. So then I was infected by one of those fungus in the toenails. I had to take medicine that was really strong for my liver, but I needed to get rid of them. But they can infect almost anything. Also, if you leave, for example, your food outside, like this one, right? The strawberries mainly, and like you leave it outside for 2 days, then boom, is you're gonna start seeing whitish stuff on top, and you're gonna be like, oh, it has what is it called? So when it has mold, right? So you say it's moldy, so we don't have to eat it. Yeah, Christine, thank you. So it's mold. So you say, hey, it's moldy, so we don't want it anymore. You leave your sandwich bread and you're like, oh, that happened to me last week. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a really nice sandwich. I'm gonna toast my bread and I'm gonna have it with mayo and lettuce and this and tomato. And now my mouth was watering. And when I checked, I left the bread outside for like 5 days and it was moldy. So I was like, okay, so I cannot eat it because actually a fungus is eating my bread already and I cannot eat it anymore. You see actually this orange over here, so actually has mold growing on top. So they call mold in general, but there are different types of microorganisms. And actually just like something, but you are not supposed to do it, but I'm just telling you, yeah, exactly, penicillin. That's where I was going. You just read my mind because actually one of the discoveries that they had is like when this fuzzy structure over here, like greenish, actually starts turning also blue, that means like this mold is mature. And actually the very first trials, even the Egyptians, like 3,000, 4,000 years ago, what they used to do is like when they were having this type of fruit, and then this greenish was turning also blue, what they were doing is like they were making some types of tea, and then they were filtering the pieces of rotten fruit, and then they were just giving the filtered water to people who were supposed to be sick of some diseases, and actually it helped them to recover and survive. Why? Because this fuzzy structure, this mold structure over here, we'll see it in a little bit, has some antibiotics that actually are going to kill microorganisms. So when people had any sickness or disease or something, they didn't know what it was, but they knew that by giving them tea of this filtered rotten fruit with this fungus, they were going to help them to survive. So years later, like many thousand years later, or at the beginning of last century, there's this guy who created the penicillin, as David is saying, by just chance of noticing that actually in some cultures, when you have the petri dish over here, and then you were adding, for example, like a drop of this, or you were having this fungus growing over here, then all the bacteria was growing around everything except where the fungus was growing. So there was a halo around in which bacteria wasn't growing. So they were like, actually, you know, like, let me see what's going on with this. And they discovered that they have antibiotic properties and they used to kill bacteria. So that was the beginning of the antibiotic world, in which we saved millions of lives with that. So one of the things that they do is like, actually now in the industry, you're not using oranges or anything. They're using cultures in which they are in huge tanks in which you're producing this type of microorganisms like penicillin. We're gonna see it in a little bit. And what they do is like, they go through a process in which they extract the antibiotic, the penicillin, from there, in which they heat it up, then they kill the fungus, and then by centrifuging something really fast, they're going to sediment all the solids, and then the supernatant, which is the top of the tank, they're going to take it, and then they're going to filter, and then later, through a several process of filtering, they're going to obtain pure penicillin that can be ready to be used for making pills, etc., etc., etc. So this is one of the processes over here. So yeah, so you can see now, then also as in food, if you try like Roquefort cheese and Camembert is another type of cheese that you can eat also. And sometimes when you slice them and you see these black things over here, actually those ones are fungus growing over there. So also, if you take what is shiitake or something like shiitake mushrooms, like, you can also eat them. And in Mexico, I know, I forgot the name of this, but sometimes people let this fungus grow on corn, and they make it like they can eat it. I don't know how they prepare it, but they eat it then later with tortilla, lime, and salt, and they say it's a really delicatessen to eat them over there. So even if they look nasty and stuff like that, but actually people love eating fungus. On the other side, we have pathogens. So if any one of you, like, you don't need to tell us, but like, we have like athlete foot, is because the fungus is infecting you also. There are other fungus that infects tobacco, for example, and they infect other crops that we use. And actually, my master's in my research was dedicated into a fungal pathogen called chytridomycosis that actually was infecting the skin of amphibians and actually was killing them. So that's why you see this poor frog upside down, because this fungus was just going over here, and what it does, it was like eating the skin of amphibian. By an immune reaction, the skin was creating several layers, like layer after layer of skin, and making it really, really thick and really thick. So at the end, the skin is too thick that actually the exchange between the exchange of elements between the skin of the frogs that usually is super sensitive to the outside can't happen, and then the frog dies because they cannot exchange calcium, potassium, and other ions, and then at the end, sometimes they die sadly of a heart attack. So I studied this disease in ecological systems in Guatemala, and I was studying a fungus actually for that. So the general characteristics of fungi over here. So remember when I was telling you that the cell wall of bacteria, it was made out of peptidoglycan? Actually, the cell wall of all fungi is going to be made out of chitin. So peptidoglycan for bacteria, chitin for fungus, and then you're gonna see later next week for plants is going to be made out of cellulose. So chitin is actually, anytime you see an insect flying, or you see a beetle or a fly or a butterfly or anything like that, insects usually they don't have an internal skeleton like the ones we have, but actually the skeleton is the one that they have outside. The shape of the insect is going to be something called the exoskeleton, and this exoskeleton is going to be made also out of chitin as well, right? So every time you see an insect, they are going to share this characteristic that the exoskeleton is going to be made out of chitin as well. So one of the main characteristics, jumping to the next one, the body of the fungus is going to be made out of long filaments when they are multicellular. These filaments the filament in singular is going to be called the hyphae, like this one over here, hyphae. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to ask that on the exam, so just take note that this is going to be very important. And when all the hyphae is combined, is going to be called mycelium. So hyphae are the filaments in the body shape of the fungus, and the hyphae combined is going to be called mycelium. So now mycelium can be divided in two different types. So when all the cells on a, no, this is a filament of a fungus, and then when all the cells are going to have cell wall divisions, is going to be called septate, like this one over here. And when the filaments actually don't have a cell wall in between, or you see it under the microscope, you're going to see just nucleus like these ones, they're going to be called sinusitic, like this one over here. So the next picture over here is going to depict the first one, like this one over here, is going to be a hyphae, which has a septate structure. You see the cell walls divided over here. And then the sinusitic, which are when you see it under the microscope, you're gonna see only the nucleus, but then you won't see any cell division. There are actually cell divisions, but actually you won't see them because there is no cell wall dividing these ones. There is going to be just a cell wall around, like dividing the main body from the environment. So all of the fungi are going to be heterotrophic organisms, and they're going to have a role as decomposing dead organic material. And one of the big differences is like they're going to have a type of digestion called digestion by absorption. So we as humans, we have a type of digestion which is called ingestion, which means that we have to take it inside of our system. And once we process everything in our stomach and then it goes to the intestines, then we're going to absorb it over there. In the case of fungus, we're gonna explain later, but actually they don't do that. But instead of that, they're going to release enzymes to the environment. They're going to degrade everything that is outside from them, and then later they're going to absorb it. So you're gonna see it in a little bit. So they can be free living, they can be parasites or symbionts, which means that they have a long relationship with other organisms. They can be multicellular or they can be unicellular like the yeast. So if you like baking or you ate bread before, so we are talking about yeasts over here. Actually, the biggest organism alive is a fungus, and actually it has, I think, over a mile, like 1 mile, so you know, like of radius or diameter, so it's something like that. But it's like an organism that actually, when you measure it, is going to be 1 mile from one place to the other one. And why 1 mile? Because they have a system of mycelium that is just growing all over the place. So scientists, they make the measurements and everything, and they realize that actually the hyphae that they were taking here belong to the same organism that they were taking over here. So by the estimates, they realized that this is like the biggest organism as a matter of length, if you can say it like that. Reproduction is going to be mostly made by spores. So just let me jump over here. So just the big differences over here. You see this picture over here, there is only one line over here. This is going to be the hyphae, right? This is another hyphae over here. But when you put them all together, like this one is going to be the mycelium. So you put all together like this one again is going to be the mycelium. One of the funny parts is like when we are actually eating these mushrooms over here, actually this is just like the tiniest section of the fungus, but actually what we are eating is just like you can tell it's just the place in which the spores are getting formed, and it's just like the reproductive place in which spores are going to be created. So usually all the fungus are going to be growing underneath when in places that we don't see. The digestion that I was mentioning before is digestion by absorption. So what's going to happen is like they're going to excrete, you're going to have some excretion of digestive enzymes. So say there are leaves and there are other compounds around over here. The enzymes are going to start degrading everything into the single blocks, like amino acids, into nucleotides, into sugar, like single sugars, etc., etc. So now once they are available like that, then they're going to be absorbed by the hyphae over here. So that's what they do. So the difference with human is like we eat them, and once it is inside of our system, we are actually going to process it like that. So they just do it outside first, and then they just absorb the single blocks like that. All right? Just let me know if you have any question. I can go slower over here. Reproduction is very interesting. Many of these organisms are going to have sexual and asexual reproduction. So they can even present both of those characteristics, and depending on the situation that they can find a mating hyphae or a mating pair, they can mate sexually, but if they don't, they will reproduce asexually. So both ways, sexual and asexual reproduction, both of them are going to produce spores. No matter what, they're going to be producing spores. But the difference is like in the asexual reproduction, the spores are going to be made by mitosis. And in the case of sexual reproduction, it's going to be done by meiosis. So don't forget, that's always in general for all organisms. Sexual is going to be related to meiosis, and asexual is going to be related to mitosis. But in this case, and the reproduction of fungus is going to be very interesting, because in these organisms, we don't have a male and female like the ones that we call for animals, like including humans. We actually call them something more general and something more applicable, which is the positive and the negative hyphae. So positive and negative, that means they're going to be compatible for reproduction. So you will never see a positive and positive, because genetically they're not going to be a match, but a positive and negative, they're going to be a genetic match for this. So what's going to happen, and this is something very interesting, is like those hyphae, say this is one hyphae and this is another one over here. So what is going to happen is like they're going to go through a process called the plasmogamy. So what it means is like they are going to fuse into one single hyphae, like this one over here. So, and gamy, I think if I'm not wrong, it's coming from the word wedding. So when you're having a wedding and you get together with your partner. And plasmo is coming from plasma or cytoplasm. So that means that they are joining together their cytoplasms. So what's going to happen with this one over here, where you have the plasmogamy actually, so you have again the two hyphae over here, and then they're going to fuse together and they're going to join into one single hyphae. So say you have this septate, so you have the different cells over here. So each one of these cells from this hyphae and this one are going to be single cells. But actually, when they join together, all of the cells that are going to be fused in plasmogamy actually are going to have two nucleus. This is something very weird, and this happens only in fungus. So they're going to be having two nucleus, and this stage of these two nucleus together is going to be called, and I'm gonna just point it over here, the eukaryotic stage, this one over here. So these eukaryotic stages are going to be just N plus N. So N plus N means because they are not going to be fused together. So they are, all of those nucleus are still going to be independent. I used something that I forgot to mention before, is going to be, this is going to be a haploid, and this is going to be another haploid strand. So the hyphae haploid, another hyphae haploid, they join together, and they're going to be N plus N. So they are not 2N yet, like diploid, because they still have their nuclei separated like this one over here. So this is going to happen in plasmogamy, and then later in karyogamy. So remember, karyo means nucleus, and gamy means like wedding or fusion. Then finally, they're going to join two nucleus, they're going to fuse them together, and then they're going to create a diploid structure. So then this diploid structure actually is going to go through meiosis, and it's going to produce 4 different spores, and then these spores are going to germinate and make new hyphae, and this hyphae can either continue with the same cycle into being plasmogamy and karyogamy and doing again, or they can just simply germinate, and they can go through asexual reproduction. In this case, they don't need anyone else. So by mitosis, they're just going to produce more haploid spores, and they can even continue in this cycle and this cycle over and over and over again until they can find another matching hyphae from a different fungus, and then they can do this sexual reproduction. So many of these fungus, they can perform both of sexual and asexual reproduction. So don't forget, very important, plasmogamy, karyogamy, those are 2 words that are extremely important to understand the life cycle. And the eukaryotic stage, which means that they have 2 nucleus, but they haven't been fused yet, all right? So that kind of makes sense. Don't forget, if you need office hours or anything like that, I can offer, so we can go more in depth about these life cycles and everything, so then we can understand it better for the exam, all right? So just moving on a little bit into the ecological importance of these organisms. Fungus can be saprobes and decomposer. That means they're going to be eating out of their dead organic material. So they are extremely important in forests and everything. But also they can be symbionts. Symbionts means a long relationship between different species or organisms of different species. And many of these ones, they can follow this type of symbiosis, which is called mutualism, in which both organisms are going to get benefits from each other. So there are actually some cases in which some termites are going to be eating wood. So actually the termites, they can be having in their intestines, they have protists, they're going to help them to degrade wood. But also other types of ants and termites, what they do is like they harvest, and they have as a crop inside of their nests and everything, they have fungus growing over there. So the fungus are going to get the benefit of getting water and getting protection, and then the ants are going to get food from there. So they're gaining benefits one to another one. One of the most important relationships between fungus and other organisms is going to be called the mycorrhizae. And I'm also pretty sure that we're going to be asking about mycorrhizae during the exam, because they are extremely important, because around 90% of all the plants in the world, they have these relationships. So this relationship of mycorrhizae is going to be a mutualism between the fungus and the root of a plant. So the people has performed experiments in which they are growing plants without fungus on the roots, and then they are growing plants with fungus in the roots with mycorrhizae and without mycorrhizae, And they realized that actually without mycorrhizae, the growth of plants is going to be poor and deficient, and they probably are not going to germinate. So that's why mycorrhizae are going to be extremely important for plants, because they are going to be surrounding the root. Even it can be inside on the side of the root, but they're going to be extremely important for the growth of the plants. So if you look around, you see different plants, 90% again, at least of those plants are going to have this relationship in their roots. So even if we don't see them, but actually they will be there. We're gonna have two different types of mycorrhizae. We have the endomycorrhizae. The endomycorrhizae implies that actually endo means inside. So that means that the hyphae of the fungus actually are going to penetrate the cells of the roots. Not all of them, but going to penetrate some cells of the root. And then we have the ectomycorrhizae, and the ecto means outside. So that means that it's going to penetrate just in between the cells of the root of the plant. So endomycorrhizae, again, some of the cells are going to get invaded by the hyphae of the fungus, and ectomycorrhizae means that you're just going to be traveling in between the cells. So both of them are beneficial. Like some species are going to contain only endomycorrhizae, other species are going to contain only ectomycorrhizae, but both of them at the end are going to have the same good benefit for the plant. Lichens, if you see like kind of like a structure on the, so say this is a bark tree over here, and you see this structure over here, you're like, wow, what the hell is that? Or you see something like this. Actually, a lichen is an association between a fungus and an autotrophic organism. Usually it's going to be an algae or a cyanobacteria, which both produces oxygen through photosynthesis. Some scientists, they think it's a parasitism of the fungus that is like kidnapping the autotrophic organism, but actually in like the autotrophic organism is going to die without the fungus, and the fungus is also going to die without the autotrophic organism. So they both have to live together. So they are great indicators for pollution in ecosystem because they're very sensitive to pollution. So the less lichens that we see, that means that we are living in a dirtier environment full of smog, etc., etc. So there are different types of lichens, but don't worry, I will not be asking this in the exam. I just want you to know what is a lichen, but I'm not going to be asking the different types of lichens that we have. Fungus as pathogens. As Dave was saying, you see the toenail of this person. Actually, that was my toe. No, just kidding. Just somebody's toes on the internet. So this is an infection over here. And there are other, actually, I'm gonna send you another video too so you can watch. And if you heard about the zombie apocalypse or something like that, I am almost sure that the zombies, if they would exist, they would be made out of fungal infection. And why will you tell me? Why would I explain you that? It is because we have some species of fungus which are coming from the genus Cordyceps. I'm gonna put it in the chat over here if you wanna check it out later. Cordyceps. And these fungus, actually what they do is like they're going to infect the brains or the nervous system of insects. And say in this case of this ant over here, what it's going to do is going to change the behavior of this ant. This ant is going to start acting different, and what it's going to do in many cases is going to try to go back to where all the other ants are, and is going to try to stay over there in order to infect the other ones. Also, many others, what they do is like the fungus is going to direct the ant to climb really, really high in a tree. So say this is a tree, and climb really, really high where the ant is not supposed to be. And then when it's over there, the ant is going to die. And then you have this structure over here that is going to grow out of the head of the ant. And this place over here is going to start producing millions, billions of spores that actually are going to fly farther. And that's why the idea of the ant going really, really high, because the higher you are, the longest the distance the spores of these ones are going to get. So instead of being over here, the spores falling over here, then you can disseminate your spores all over the place, having the probability of infecting other ants. And then these ants are going to do the same. They're going to change the behavior, and then they're going to jump, and then they're going to climb trees and then die over there. So if there are other pathogens that change your behavior by infecting your brain, cordyceps is one of them. So if I believe that zombies are going to exist, I truly believe it's going to be either a virus similar like the rabies, or is going to be something like this one over here. So I'm gonna send you a video later so you can see how scary they can be. Fungus in ecological systems, we talk about mycorrhizae. They can be pathogens. They are good for food sources, carbon allocation, because they are eating the dead organic food. And because of these ones, they are decomposers. A little bit of classification, that might take me 5-10 minutes or something like that. We have, this is a shorter classification compared to protists. So the 4 main ones are going to be Basidiomycota, Ascomycota, Zygomycota, and Chytridiomycota. So those are the 4 ones that we are going to learn in this class. So we're gonna move quickly between of these 4 ones that I want to mention. So first one, Basidiomycota. If you eaten mushrooms before, so welcome to eating Basidiomycota before. So next time when you're calling Domino's Pizza, you can tell them, yeah, can I have on my pizza some Basidiomycota, please? And they'll be like, what? Probably they're gonna hang up because they think that you're gonna be crazy. But actually, mushrooms are included between this big phylum over here. We have about 30,000 species of organisms over here. So we have puffballs, also sinkhorns, bracket fungi, earth, stars, frost, and yeast. Some of the yeast are going to be included over here. So they are filamentous fungus, and then they produce spores called basidiospores. So you're gonna see for all these fungus, the spores are going to be called basidiospores. Like this one is gonna be called ascospores, zygospores, and then these ones are different, but all of these ones, they have the very first name and then spores as the name of the spores that they produce. So they have a huge impact because they can be decomposers. They can also be, they can create meningitis, so which is an inflammation of one of the layers of the brain. So Cryptococcus neoformans is one of the ones that can infect humans. And actually, this is a big diversity of fungus that we have over here. We have some of these ones which are called the Amanita. So this is written like this. So we have 2 species, Amanita muscarida, I think, and Amanita virosa, if I'm not wrong. I think I'm not spelling it wrong, but this, I left it over there in the chat. But actually, the last 2 that I wrote are actually, one can be hallucinogenic, and the other one is called the death angel. So the second one that I typed over there, Amanita virosa, is called the death angel. So it's just one mushroom that you can eat is going to be enough to kill you. So I know a person in Guatemala that actually his 2 kids, one of 5 and one of 7, they knew that their parents used to go and collect mushrooms in the forest for eating. So one day that they were alone, sadly, they went to collect mushrooms to eat. And instead of collecting the right mushrooms, they ate that Amanita virosa, and both of the 2 children passed away. So in matter of a couple minutes, the liver was just, like destroyed, so they couldn't recover and they passed away. But actually, this is really sad, but that's why people who are eating this type of fungus as recreational drugs and everything, they have to be very careful because they don't know which one is which. Also, when you have the mushroom over here, actually the mushroom is just going to be the reproductive section in which the fungus is going to be producing spores. So then the rest of the real fungus, all the mycelium, is going to be underneath over here. So all these hyphae, all these lines that are over here are actually eukaryotic cells. So that means like each cell, if you have a close-up of one cell over here, that means that actually are going to have two nuclei, like this one over here. So next time that you are eating a mushroom, you see it in front of you, you're gonna be like, wow. So actually, if you could like make a close-up with a microscope, you could see that actually all the cells of this mushroom are going to be made out of two nucleus, and just the ones that are over here at the bottom are the ones that are going to be diploid and making spores over here. All right. So if you watch this cartoon before, the Smurfs, or you watch in movies or something, actually, this species is one species that it makes you trip, makes you see things all over the place. So I am almost sure that the guy who invented this cartoon actually probably ate some of those mushrooms, and then he started seeing like dwarfs and smurfs, blue, like tiny dwarfs all over the place. So he created this cartoon over here. So that's why they live in this fungus, because actually these type of fungus are hallucinogenic. So when you eat them, you actually can start seeing things and tripping and all over the place. And actually many of the culture, like the Mayan culture, like people in priests and warriors, they used to eat mushrooms, and it wasn't something like, oh yeah, I want to get high in mushrooms or anything like that, but actually it was a process, a ritual in which they were getting close to their ancestors, but actually also they were using it for hunting. So usually when they were eating these type of mushrooms, their pupils, they used to get really dilated, and they could see slightly better at night. And since they were like high with all the mushrooms and everything, they were capable of running at night, going hunting and doing all this crazy stuff. But now, say for example, mushrooms are like a illegal or forbidden drug in the United States and our culture. But for many other cultures, actually, this is something that is spiritual, like ayahuasca with some of the Andes cultures in South America. Like it's forbidden in the United States, but for them, it's not something that you do every day. It's something you do to get in contact with, they say, other realities, etc., etc. So perspectives are different. Ascomycota, so they are the sac fungi. Asco means sac. So we have over here the brewer's yeast. So the yeast that we are using, I'm almost gonna finish in a couple minutes. The brewer yeast are the ones that we use in for baking, making beer, etc., etc. So these are the largest of all phyla. Remember, phyla is plural. So if you heard about penicillium, as David was mentioning the penicillin before, so the very first antibiotic that we created as humans, that we discovered, is coming from this species over here, which is the penicillium species. So then we can create, and as I was mentioning before, the process of how to make penicillin, but actually we are using a fungus for antibiotics. But also from other ascomycotas, we use them for bread, alcoholic beverages, cheeses, and also they can be pathogens. So there's some pictures of the ascus, and they have the spores inside. So we can use, as I was mentioning before, the yeasts are extremely important. If you like to have a beer, like later on the weekend, or if you like drinking wine, but also if you enjoy baking and you want the dough, when you're making the dough, you add some yeast and then you leave it over there for a couple of hours to grow, and they have this characteristic smell and everything. So we are using fungus in order to make a really nice bread like this one over here. So they start producing at some point carbon dioxide through the process of fermentation, also alcohol. And other types of yeast are going to be pathogenic, like this species Candida albicans. I actually had it when I was 9 years old. And what happens with Candida albicans is an infection over here in your mouth. And trust me, I had it before in Guatemala, and I couldn't even swallow my own saliva because it was so painful to have it that it was really, really, really bad. So I needed to take antifungal medicine, but this is really, really, really bad. So I don't recommend. If anyone heard that you had candidiasis, is because you had this fungal disease. There are other diseases like histoplasma, which causes pulmonary infection. One of my friends in Guatemala had pulmonary infection, and he was sick, and he was out for 2 years, actually 4 semesters. He was out because of this disease over here. Aspergillus makes aflatoxins, which are carcinogenic, which is not really good. And that's why the Prop 65 from California, who is now getting more and more enforced, they even in chocolate, we are forced to test for aflatoxin in chocolate because we don't have to have high levels of aflatoxins anywhere because they can produce cancer in the long term. All right. Next one, Zygomycota. They are synocytic. That means that the hyphae doesn't have divisions in between of these cells. But even if they are only 1% of described species, actually they are pretty famous because when you leave your bread outside and then you get this coloration like this one over here, actually it's going to be a species of the member of the phylum Zygomycota that is growing over there, which is going to be called Rhizopus stolonifer. So most of the time, 80% of the time when you leave your bread or your fruits outside and they get moldy, it's going to be this species that is going to be growing over there. And even if they are only 1% of the total diversity of fungus, but they are really fast growing and they're all over the place. Cryptomycota, one of the oldest members. This is the last one, last slide. Oldest member of the phyla of fungus is going to be called the chytrid fungus. They, instead of having spores, they have something called zoospores. They call it zoospores because they're going to look like a sperm. It's going to have a spore, but actually the spore is going to have a flagella. So they're going to be dedicated and obligated to be living around water. The other organisms, the other fungus, they don't need to be living around water, but chytrid fungus they need because the reproduction is by something called zoospores, which they need to be moving through water. They can be pathogens and they can kill, as I was telling you before, amphibians, which is a huge decline of organisms that we have in amphibians due to this group of organisms. So that was the last thing that I needed to mention, and there are some questions over here to remember for your study. So general characteristics of protists, ecological uses of protists, pros and cons of protists for humans. What is the main compound made of the cell wall of a bacteria compared to a fungi? So peptidoglycan, you have chitin. How digestion by absorption is going to differ from fungus to humans. Remember, they're going to be by absorption. Ours is from ingestion. Plasmogamy and karyogamy know the differences. What is a eukaryotic cell? Is a cell that is actually going to contain two nucleus, I'm sorry. The benefits and detriments of fungus in human life, and what is the importance of fungi in the environment. So those are the questions that you need to think for the exam, among others. So questions or anything like that. You know, I felt it was a really like running, but do you have any questions about fungus or protists so far? Let's stop sharing so I can see all of you. If anyone's still over here, can you tell me, let me know you haven't fell asleep? I only see Sammy and David on their cameras, but I want to know if the other people is around here. Marie, Juliana. Okay, thank you. What about the rest? Christine, Jennifer, Evelyn. Yeah, Nolan. Okay, thank you. Everyone is like waking up already, like, ah. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Okay, so no questions or anything like that? No? All right, so if no more questions or anything, so have a good evening. Don't forget, we have the worksheet this week and we have laboratory. For the lab is just going to be a documentary of awesome life of fungus or something like that, which is only 40 minutes. So the lab this week is on your own. You only have to write a report between half a page to 1 page. Like I'm pretty sure in 1 hour you can submit everything, and then we are free of biology this week, okay? All right, everyone, so have a good evening, and I will see you next week, okay?
Thank you.
Take care, Professor.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.